don't go fast. Go. ಸಂಸಾರದವನವಲಿದಲೋಕ ತ್ರಾಣಾಯ ಕಾರಣ್ಯ ಕನಯ ಗಣ ಗಣಾತ್ಯಂ
ಸಂಸಾರದವ ನಲಲಿದಲೋಕ ತ್ರಾಣಾಯ ಕಾರಣ್ಯ ಗಣ ಗಣಾತ್ಯಂ
ಪ್ರಾಪ್ತಾಸ್ಯ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣ ಗುಣನ್ಯವಾಸ್ಯ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ಪ್ರಾಪ್ತಸ್ಯ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣ ಗುಣನವಾಸ್ಯ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ಮಹಾಪ್ರಭೋ ಕೀರ್ತನ ನಿತ್ಯ ಗೀತ ವಂದಿತ ಮಾಧ್ಯಾನ್ಮನಸುರಸೇನ
ಮಹಾಪ್ರಭು ಕೀರ್ತನ ನಿತ್ಯ ಗೀತ ಭರಿತ್ರ ಮಾದ್ಯನ್ ಮನಸರಸೇನ
ರೋಮಾಂಚ ಕಂಪಾಶ್ರುತರಂಗ ಬಾಜೋ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ರೋಮಾಂಚ ಕಂಪ ಶ್ರುತರಂಗ ಭಜ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ಶ್ರೀ ವಿಗ್ರಹಾನ ಧನ ನಿತ್ಯನಾನ ಶ್ರೀರಂಗತಾನ್ಮಧ್ಯ ಮಂಜನಾದೋ
ವಿಗ್ರಹಾರಾಧನ ನಿತ್ಯನನ ಶೃಂಗಾರ ತನ್ಮಂದಿರಮಜನಾದ
ಯುಕ್ತಾಸ್ಯ ಭಕ್ತಾಂ ಚ ನಿಯುಂಜತೋಪಿ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ಯುಕ್ತಾಸ್ಯ ಭಕ್ತಾಂ ಚ ನಿಯುಂಜತೋಪಿ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ಚತುರ್ವಿಧಾ ಶ್ರೀ ಭಗವತ್ ಪ್ರಸಾದ ಸ್ವದನ್ನ ತೃಪ್ತಾನ್ ಹರಿಭಕ್ತ ಸಂಗಾನ್
ಚತುರ್ವಿಧ ಶ್ರೀ ಭಗವತ್ ಪ್ರಸಾದ ಸದ್ವನ ತೀರ್ಥಂ ಹರಿಭಕ್ತ ಸಂಗ
ತ್ರಿಥೈವ ತೃಪ್ತಿಂ ಭಜತಃ ದೈವ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ವಿದ್ವೈವ ತೃಪ್ತಿಂ ಭಜತು ಸದೇವ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ಶ್ರೀರಾಧಿಕಾ ಮಾಧವಯವಪಾರ ಮಾಧುರ್ಯ ಲೀಲಾ ಗುಣರೂಪಮಾಂ
ಶ್ರೀರಾಧಿಕಾ ಮಾಧವಯರ ಪರ ಮಧುರ ಲೀಲ ಗುಣರೂಪನಂ
प्रतीक्षणा स्वादनलोलुपास्य वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
प्रतीक्षणा स्वादनलोलुपास्य वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
निकुञ्जयो नो रतिकेलिसिदयलिबियुक्तिरपेक्षणीयम्
निकुञ्जयो नरतिकेलिसिदय ययलिबियुक्ति अपेक्षणीया
पात्रे दक्षायात् अतिवल्लभास्य वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
तत्रातिदाख्यात् अतिवल्लभास्य वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
साक्षादतिविन्द समस्तशास्त्रे उत्कास्तता भाव्यत एव साद्भिः
सख्याधरिक्तेन समस्तशास्त्रे उक्तस्तथा भाव्यतैव सदि
किन्तु प्रभूया प्रियैव तास्य वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
किन्तु प्रभुश्च प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
यस्य प्रसादात् भगवत्प्रसादो यस्य प्रसादान् न गति कुतोऽपि
यश प्रसाद भगवत्प्रसाद यश प्रसाद न गति कुतोऽपि
ध्यायान् सुवासं तस्य यशस्त्रीसन्ध्यं वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
जयां तुभं तस्य यशस्त्रीसन्ध्यं वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम् 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 वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
नमो ॐ विष्णुप्रदाय कृष्णपस्थाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्ति वेदान्ता स्वामिन् इति नामिने
Yasha Prasada, you see? Yasha Prasada, the last one. Yeah?
Did I miss anything?
Okay. Sorry, I'll listen.
नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्ति वेदान्ता स्वामिन् इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणि प्रसारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पश्चात्यादेशतारिणे
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवने प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पश्चात्यादेशतारिणे
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीसवदी गौरभक्तवृंद
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Panchatattva, two more times Panchatattva. Shri Krishna Chaitanya.
Oh, okay. I mean Jai Shri Krishna.
You say two more times.
Jai Shri Krishna. Okay. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vinde.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Jai Vishnupada Paramsa Pirubhajakacharya Suttara Sarashishi Mariskon Pratishta Viviti Samstapakacharya Vaishnava Siramani Gauru Prajana Krishna Prema Bhakti Datta Patita Pavana His Divine Grace Abhacharavinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ji Ki Jai Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patitu Dhari Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhakti Raghunath Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai Nanta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Prem Si Kaho Si Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vindi Ki Jai Jai Paramadayal Si Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai Premanama Sankirtane Janaka Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinandana Shman Gauranga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mavrana Avatar Ki Jai Golokera Pramadhan Harinam Sankirtan Jaga Ki Jai Yuga Dharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai Brihat Nidanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopakupinath Radha Kunda Samakun Giriraj Gopadhan Ki Jai Shri Brajabhum Vrindavan Mathurdam Ki Jai Dear Lordship Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai Shri Mayapurna Vadip Eka Chakradam Ki Jai Paramakaruna Shri Gaura Nitai Ki Jai Shri Purushottama Ketra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Srimati Subhadra Devi Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Kari Shingare Bhagavan Ki Jai Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Bolo Shri Matuladharani Ki Jai Shamaveta Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai Nitai Gaurari Pramanande Hari Bol All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru Shri Gauranga Hari Bol. Namaste Narashi Gaya Namaste Narashi Gaya Pralada Nada Ine Pralada Nada Ine Hiranyakashipur Vaksha Hiranyakashipur Vaksha Silatangkanakalaye Jaya Silatangkanakalaye Ito Nisinga Parato Nisinga ito nisingo parato nisingam jato jato jamita to nisingam Bayir nisingo Rudaye nisingam Narashingamadimi sharanam prapade Tabakara kamalabare Naka Adabhuta Singha Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanabringa Kesavadrita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Sabakara Kamala Bari Naka Adabhuta Singha Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanabringa Kesavadrita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Kesavadruta Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Kesavadruta Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jaya Nishingade Jaya Nishingade Nishingade Jaya Nishingade Jaya Narahari Jaya Narahari Narahari Jaya Narahari Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Nara Bhakta Prahlad Shira Prahlad Nara Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Nitai Gora Haribo Jai Shri Bhakti Pada Sarvigna Vinashana Kanishingari Bhagavan Ki Jai Jai Bhakta Shri Prahlad Maharaj Ki Jai Nitai Gaurari Premanande Haribo Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Shattavatyai Namo Namah Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Shattavatyai Namo Namah वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रिय केशव सत्य कृष्ण भक्ति प्रदे देवी शतवताय नमो नमः। जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। Should I try Tulsi?
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Radha Krishna Seva Pabo Yei Abhilashi
Radha Krishna Seva Pavam Eya Abhilashi
Radha Krishna Seva Pabo Yei Abhilashi
Radha Krishna Seva Pavam Eya Abhilashi
Je tomara saranaloy Tara vancha purna hoy
Je tomara sharanala Tara vancha purna
Kripa kori koro tare Vrindavana basi
Tumi kripa kori koro tare Vrindavana basi
Morai Abilas Bilas kunje diyo vas
Morahi Abilas Vilas kunje diyava
Nayane haribo sada Yugala ruparasi
Aminayane riva sada Yugala ruparasi
Yei nivedana dharo sakiranu gata koro
Ini vedana dhara sakiranu gata karo
Seva adhikara diye koro nija dasi
Seva yadi koro diye koro nija dasi
Dina Krishna dase ko yei jena mora hoy
Dina Krishna das koi ye namora
Sri Radha Govinda prema sada yena basi
Shri Radha Govinda preme sada enavasi
Sri Radha Govinda preme sada yena basi
Shri Radha Govinda preme sada enavasi
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
यानि कानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणपादे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणपादे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणपादे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणपादे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणपादे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणपादे हरे कृष्ण
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama
Hare
Jaya Tusima
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Tulsi Maharani Jaya Vrindadevi
Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani
Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya
Tulsi
Vrindadevi
Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi
Jaya Vrindadevi Jaya Vrindadevi Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi
Nita Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nita Gaura Hari Bol
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Shri Vrindai Tulasi Bai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradevi Sattavatai Namo Namaha Vrindai Tulasi Bai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradevi Sattavatai Namo Namaha Vrindayai tulasi devai priyayai kesava satya Krishna bhakti prade devi Shatavatai namo namah. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shishi Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you as wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavana. My desire is that you also grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower carry damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays. May I always swim in love with Shri Radha and Govinda. Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. The lyrics and how it goes. Your singing is good, no problem. But you have to listen to the steps, the variations as well. Yeah. Otherwise, was overall was good. I give you 7 out of 10. Prabhu, you know, it's not easy. You know, for the first time you're standing there and singing. So when you're listening, different, but when you're actually performing, different. Because you have to know the. Yeah. Over. But you need the structure. The variation and change. Jai. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. Blaspheme the devotees who dedicate a life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods and Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are often Vedas as fruitive activities, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees, they can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Jai Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhyascha Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Ananta Kuti Vishnu Vrinda ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhyastakam ki Jai. Tito Darpana Majanam Bhava Mahadava Ninivapanam Shri Akari Vachandika Vitaranam Vidya Badhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Shrajanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Namnamakari Vaudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamita Smarane Nakala Eta Trishitava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdhaivam Idrishamiya Janina Nuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadari न धनं न जनं न सुन्दरीं कवितं वा जगरीश कामये मम जन्मनि जन्मनीश्वरे भवता भक्तिरहैतुकी त्वयि अयि नन्दतनुजकिङ्करं पतितं मां विस्मये भवं बुधो कृपया तव पादपङ्कज स्थिता धूलिसदृशं विचिन्तय नयनं गलोरश्रुधारय वादनं गदगदहृदया गिरा पुलकाञ्चितं वपुकदा तव नाम ग्रहणे भविष्यति जुगायितं निमेषेण चक्षुषा प्रवृषायितं शून्यायितं जगत् सर्वं गोविन्द विरहेण मे आश्लिष्टपादरतं पिनष्टु माम् अदर्शनार्मर्महतं करोतु वा यथा तथा वा विदधातु लम्पतो मत्प्राणतस्तु स एव नापरः हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। जय श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु श्री कृष्ण की जय। नमो महावरण्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामिने गौरतीश नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनीति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवं गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पश्चात्यरिशतम्। Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire conditioned life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because its praise raises the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which all is anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. They are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking oneself a lower than straw in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, somehow or other I am fallen in this ocean of death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And will the hairs of my body stand on the end of that recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and it sure remains so. Even if it enters me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me, he is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna ki jai. Jai Shri Guru Vandana Mangal Charan ki jai. Om Magyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurumilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatha Vintam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Cha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shmate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shrunavari Pasattari Satarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namini Shri Varshabhanuvidevi Deitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhujjala Premadhya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravane Shri Murtaye Rinatarine Rupanuga Viruddha Posidanta Dvanta Harine Namagora Kishoraya Sakchavera Murtaye Vipralambhara Sambodhe Paramujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchidanandanamine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Virbhava Bhumishvam Nirdesha Sajana Priya Vaishnavo Sarvabhuma Sri Jagannatayate Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaivacha Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavaranayo Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaura Tvishe Namaha Panchatattvamakam Krishna Bhaktarupa Sarupakam Bhaktavatara Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanto Namostute Jayatam Suratupangor Mama Mandamatir Gatir Masarvasvar Padambujo Radha Madana Mohanam Divyarvindaranya Kalpadumada Shmara Nagara Shingasanastu Shmaradha Shila Govinda Devo Pristalivi Shiva Manushmarami Shmara Sara Sarambi Bam Shvata Tatastita Karshan Venu Swanar Gopi Gopinata Shri Suna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Guru Vandana
Shrimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shrimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 26, verse number 26. And now we're continuing that. And we have been discussing in the last couple of days the false ego. So today we're going to go deeper, more information about the false ego. And one aspect of it is what's called the metaverse, or what Facebook is doing now, because it's very interesting to understand what they're doing. It is the false ego on steroids. And what is the metaverse? Well, it's a virtual universe, and it is created, with artificial intelligence, and right away, people have begun to criticize it because they consider it dangerous. Point 1, it will harm teenagers' mental health. 2, it will facilitate the spread of disinformation. 3, it will fuel political polarization. And eventually it can produce what's called a dystopian reality, where the metaverse is used as the means to produce what we could call an opium for the masses. This is very interesting points, and it's something that Facebook is spending over $1 billion to produce, and because they're convinced, or Zuckerberg is convinced, that it's going to be the future of artificial intelligence, and he'll be able to make a lot of money by it because he produces different things, like something you put on your head. Eventually, it'll be reduced down to a little chip that you put in your brain, and you can switch off your perception of already the illusory material world to go into another bigger illusory world in your mind. So, but the Facebook is presenting it as if it's something good. It's another advancement of modern science. In other words, it says that it can shift our existence from being rooted in the physical world to one in which our digital presence increasingly supplements our real one. Well, the so-called real one is already an illusion, so now it's going to supplement the illusion. That's why I say it's actually Maya on steroids. So the main point is that they're presenting it, or Zuckerberg is presenting it, as an advancement of civilization. But what did Prabhupada say? We discussed this somewhat yesterday. He said that advancement of material civilization is a manifestation of the false ego. So therefore, it would only increase the false ego of people who already have a false ego. But it would make it even worse. And therefore, it's presented as by Facebook as a network of 3D virtual worlds focused on social connection. And it will produce a virtual world where people can socialize, work, and play. So that sounds okay, but that's not what it really is. It is going to basically program people to be more in illusion than they are already. Now, what the illusion they're in now is already horrible. Imagine how bad it'll be when people are walking around with these type of thing that they put on their head, and they're seeing another so-called reality that they can create according to what they want. See? So that, in other words, this is the opportunity to expand the false ego to what people actually want. They want to be God. They want to create their own reality. They want to control it. They want to think that they're controlling it. So this would condemn everyone to remain, or they're already remaining in the cycle of birth and death. This would make it even worse. And it might inhibit them completely from ever having any chance of liberating themselves from the cycle of birth and death. So we see what these all these new advancements in society are actually more and more dangerous and more leading toward what's called a dystopian universe. Now, what is this word dystopian? It's a very interesting word that's being used a lot now. And it's an imagined state of people's consciousness or of a society where there is great suffering or injustice. It's something nightmarish and terrifying. So this is called a dystopian, let's say, state of mind. And it can expand, like Facebook's trying to do it, to make it a whole society like this, where people are egos have gone completely out of control, and they think they're God because they can produce their own reality, and so-called reality, and it damages their mind. It damages their ability to understand what is real, what is not real. And don't forget, the first mantra of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1, it says that the whole purpose of knowledge is to be able to discern reality from illusion for the welfare of all, while the metaverse and other things that are coming down the pike of so-called advancement of civilization will blur more significantly the ability to perceive reality distinguished from illusion. So it's basically condemning people to live in a dystopian state, and it denies them any possibility of being liberated from the cycle of birth and death. So in this verse, kartavyam karanatvam cha kartyatvam cheti lokshanam santagora vimudatvam itiva syad ahankrite. This false ego is characterized as the doer, as an instrument, and as an effect. It is further characterized as serene, active, or dull, according to how it is influenced by the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Now, we've discussed this, that the modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, are supernatural forces that force people to do things. People meaning you and me. We're forced to do things by these forces. And we can do them either under the influence of ignorance or passion, or meaning lust, or goodness. But because these modes are always fluctuating, they're going to be mixed. So even a person in a mode of goodness, at some time during the day, he or she will be acting in a mode of passion and ignorance, because the modes are fluctuating. Like when you sleep, we're always in the mode of ignorance. When we wake up, we gradually come to the mode of passion. And there might be some periods where there's some goodness, but usually very little goodness, a lot of passion, and ignorance. So, therefore, in the purport, Prabhupada says, ahankara, or false ego, is transformed into the demigods, the controlling directors of material affairs. Now, why does it say that? Well, the demigods are like you and me. They're jivas, but they have attained a very high level of Krishna consciousness, but they still have some problems. What is their problem? They want to dominate still. They want to control, and they want to do things. So they're given these positions as demigods, who are exactly what it says, demigods, half gods, not full gods. And they are empowered with great responsibilities of controlling the material, let's say, needs of living entities, like the sun, the rain, the wind, the changing seasons, digestion, organizing the functions of the body, organizing the changing seasons. All these things are under the control of the demigods. So therefore, it's not surprising that it says that hankar, or false ego, is transformed into the demigods, the controlling directors of material affairs. As an instrument, the false ego is represented as different senses and sense organs. And as the result of the combination of the demigods and the senses, material objects are produced. In the material world, we are producing so many things, and this is called advancement of civilization, but factually, the advancement of civilization is a manifestation of the false ego. By false ego, all material things are produced as objects of enjoyment. One has to cease increasing artificial necessities in the form of material objects. One great acharya, Narottam Das Thakur, has lamented that when one deviates from pure consciousness of Vasudeva or Krishna consciousness, he becomes entangled in material activities. The exact words he uses are Satsanga Chadi Kainu Asate Vilasa Te Karani Lagia Ye Karma Bandha Fansa. So we went over this yesterday, but I'm repeating it because this will lead into the next, let's say, part of this lecture, and that is and then so what Narottam Das Thakur is saying here is, I have given up the pure status of consciousness because I wanted to enjoy in the temporary material manifestation. Therefore, I have been entangled in a network of actions and reactions. So we can actually map out this process by, first of all, analyzing our own life. Now, we can remember when we were kids, let's say from 1 to 12, and then we can remember when we attained the stage of puberty, where we have a certain awakening of desires from our previous life. And then we can remember when we're like 16 or 18, where we're actually pursuing many of those unfinished desires from previous life. And we don't even understand why we're attracted to such things. It's very overwhelming, especially for young girls and boys, because they suddenly become attracted to things that they were not attracted to before, because there's an awakening of desires from their previous life, unfinished desires. And then we have what's called, maturing. But maturing usually becomes a type of addiction to sense gratification. So we begin to learn things, read things, witness things that we would have never done when we were, let's say, 6 years old or even 10 years old. But now we're attracted to things that are actually sinful. And that's due to peer pressure. It's due to modern education. It's due to social media. It's due to television. It's due to movies. It's due to the news. It's due to books. You can learn how to make bombs and blow people up. You can learn just about everything now on the internet, or you go to the library also. And there's a huge number of books in the library, and most of them are all about how to increase your involvement in the material world of sense gratification. So, and then put on top of that the metaverse, which we already discussed now. If you came in late, it's a shame, because you should understand what it is. There's the metaverse, which is the false ego, like I said, on steroids. So it looks like there's a very bleak future for kids and people in this world. So Prabhupada continues, he says, this false ego is characterized as the doer, as an instrument, and as an effect. It is further characterized as serene, active, or dull, according to how it is influenced by the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. If we don't understand how the modes of material nature are acting on us, and to understand it, you'd have to read carefully the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which gives a pretty detailed explanation of how the modes of material nature are acting on us. So, if you have a sickness, and you can't figure out why you got the sickness, how you got it, how you're going to get rid of it, you'll go to a doctor, or a dentist, or a surgeon, and you want to ask them, doctor, how did I get this, and how do I get rid of it? Well, in the same way, the real disease we have is the influence of the three modes of material nature. And we don't even understand how it's working on us. But we can see the effects of it. Like someone says something to you, you get really angry, and you feel like you want to kill them, and you might even try. These are the type of things that you go from the mode of goodness immediately to the mode of ignorance over a period of seconds sometimes, or over a longer period, and you begin to have these very dark thoughts in your mind. This is all the influence of the modes of material nature. Or you might have a great idea how you can make a lot of money, and you're meditating on it, and you start working for it, and it could take years before you actually achieve your goal. In the meantime, you don't have much time or no time for Krishna consciousness. So we should understand how these fruitive activities are getting a foothold in our consciousness and basically forcing us to ignore Krishna consciousness and spend all our time making money for sense gratification. Okay. And then increasing our responsibilities, having one kid, having 2 kids, having 3 kids, having 4 kids, having 5 kids, having 6 kids, etc. The more kids you have, and the more divorces you have, and new wives you have, or new husbands you have, it just increases the baggage that we're carrying unnecessarily. And when one of the purposes of Lord Ramachandra was to establish Ekapatni Vrat. A high-class man only has one wife, and a high-class woman only has one husband, and they remain satisfied like that for the rest of their life and they go through the Varnashram system of brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas. So somebody said, well, how do women do sannyas? Well, they do sannyas, but not traveling around. They stay under the protection of their elder son or in a spiritual community where they're protected, and they basically live like their husband, who's engaged in tapasya, or engaged in spiritual activities all the time. Okay, so then Prabhupada explains that those who are in the mode of goodness, he says, they're somewhat sober and serene, and they can see things as they are. And those in the mode of passion, they are unnecessarily going on making plans for material sense gratification, and full of activities without any aim of life. Well, what does that mean, without any aim of life? They don't have any aim of liberating themselves from the cycle of birth and death. They're just completely engaged because of the mode of passion in making money and spending it and buying things and increasing their sense gratification. And then he says, and mudatvam, that is, like those who are in the mode of ignorance, they're like animals. They don't know what is the aim of life, what they're working for, what is the value of life. Nothing of that. They're just interested in filling their belly with food and then engaging in sense gratification. So they're worse than the people in the mode of passion, because the people in the mode of passion, at least they do things, get things done. So I know people, whenever they start something, they never finish it. But I know other people, they start something and they don't stop until they finish it. See? So the second, a person in mode of passion has the ability to start things and finish them, but because of their absolute attachment to sense gratification. But people in the mode of ignorance, they're lazy. They'll start so many things, they never finish them, right? And they never really get anywhere in life because they're just engaged in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, like animals. So, therefore, this false ego, through the false ego, we create different hopes of activity. And the desires that we have are very deep-rooted. So, Prabhupada says we have to pluck out this kamashayam, the root of karma. Now, what is that? There's 4 stages of that. There's kutam or kutasta, and there is falonmukha and falprapti. And so what are these things? So we go now to the nectar of devotion, where this is explained in the first chapter. Nectar of devotion is a summary of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of Rupa Goswami, which is, Prabhupada calls it, the law book of Krishna consciousness, right? So, in that, he begins by explaining how to recognize the characteristics of pure devotional service in chapter 1. And it says that pure devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. So when a person actually joins the temple, and there's 2 ways of joining it. One is by living outside and coming regularly to the temple, or as I did when I was 21 years old, join the temple and live full-time in the temple and be completely dedicated, giving up all other purposes and desires, and just being engaged in devotional service 24 hours a day. And that was very great training for me and many other young men and women that joined the movement in early period of Krishna consciousness. So the first thing you experience is almost immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. What does it mean, material distress? Anxiety for eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Those are 4 animal impulses: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So you have to eat, you have to have food. To sleep, you have to have a place to sleep, right? Like, imagine if you were homeless right now and you have to sleep outside. You would actually die, right? Or have a very, very difficult time. And then mating, well, you have to find a mate and then try and enjoy sense gratification. And eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Well, you have to defend yourself. You know, maybe somebody come around wants to, like, for example, homeless people. They're living a very dangerous life. Sometimes people purposely target homeless people to beat them up or steal whatever they have or kill them. It happens every day in New York, in Los Angeles, and even in Seattle. Okay, so the first thing is relief from all kinds of material distress. And secondly, it's the beginning of auspiciousness in the life of a person who surrenders to Krishna. And number 3, it's rarely achieved. Yeah, like I said, unless one is consistently in the mode of goodness, if they have long periods of passion and ignorance and some goodness, they'll never finish what they begin. The only people that finish what they begin are people who are always in the mode of goodness. They'll start something, and the people who are passionate, they'll also get things done. But people who are in the mode of goodness, they get things done in a nice way. Where the people who are in the mode of passion, they mostly get things done in a bad way. And when we talk about Tata family, they got a lot of things done, right? But what they got done seemed to be good, but actually it was very bad for the people that were working for them, because they were subjected to very horrible conditions in those factories, and they still are today. Okay, so then number 3 is by pure devotional service, it automatically puts one in transcendental happiness. And then number 4, pure devotional service is rarely achieved. And number 5, pure devotional service derides even the conception of liberation. In other words, pure devotee is not interested in liberation. Nadanam, Najanam, Nasundaram, Kavitam Va, Jagadisha Kamaye, Mama Janmani, Janmani Swari, Bhavatat Bhakti Haitaki Tvai. I'm not even interested. I want to do this birth after birth. I don't want liberation. I just want your service, Krishna. See? So that was a genuine, pure devotee. And then finally, pure devotional service is the only way to attract Krishna. So the first point, relief from material, let's say, misery, is explained very nicely, and it's based on understanding how our unfinished desires in a previous life are again assumed in the next life, and how it's entangling and can go on life after life after life. So how is that? And so if we understand this, then we'll understand the different psychological steps that a human being goes through in this life, and how to purify those steps or remain ignorant of it and just be a victim of those steps. So step one is that whoever is born, they have baggage of unfinished desires. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been born, and they wouldn't have a material body. It's only because when they died, they still had many unfinished, we had many unfinished material desires, and a mixed bag of good things we did and bad things we did. In other words, karma. And that's why we're born again in the material world. And that's why I said before, there's two possibilities. One possibility is we can pursue all those unfinished desires and create even more more desires, and remain anchored in the cycle of birth and death. Or we can, if we meet genuine devotees and hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by them, we can stop this whole thing and liberate ourselves from the cycle of birth and death. So these are the two reasons why there's a material world that's created. One, to facilitate the perverted desires of people, birth after birth, to pursue and enhance all their material desires, or to stop the whole thing by Krishna consciousness and change the quality of the desires to desires to please, rather than pleasing oneself, to please Krishna. So these are the two possibilities and two reasons why there's a material world created by Krishna. You would think, well, wait a minute, why did he create the material world? Why didn't he just keep us all in the spiritual world like robots, where we don't have free will? No, then there wouldn't be the existence of love like that. So Krishna wants real love. Just like every woman that gets married, she thinks that she will have real love with her husband. Is that right, ladies? Huh? I mean, I'm not saying right now, I'm saying when you got married. Right now you might, realize that that's not possible, but when you got married, you had faith that the rest of my life I'm going to be completely surrendered to this man because he's going to be the most wonderful person in the world, right? And the husband that gets married, he's like, I'm marrying the most wonderful lady in the world. She'll do everything I say. Oh, wait a minute. That's an impossible desire, right? You're not going to do everything you say. Well, it might look like that in the beginning, but it's going to change over time, right? And so you see, the expectations we have are not only unrealistic, but they are misleading. They're completely misleading. Therefore, unless we have tolerance. Now, how do you get tolerance? You have to be Krishna conscious. Now, most people don't tolerate. That's why there's so much divorce now. In India, they were taught, young girls and even men were taught to be tolerant, right? But that's broken also. So that now, when that breaks down, there's a lot of divorce. Is there a lot of divorce now in India? Yeah. Did it exist 100 years ago? Very little. But the Gujarati community in South Africa, for at least 3 or 4 generations, nobody got married outside of marrying a Gujarati, and there was no divorce, right? But now, it started, and it started big time in India. Because people who have material desires have unrealistic expectations, and they're going to be it's going to be a failure. It doesn't matter whatever your expectations are for sense gratification in the material world. We don't understand what the laws of material nature are. One of the laws of material nature is if you seek sense gratification and achieve it, it'll be followed by misery. That's a law of nature. Most people don't realize that. It is a law of nature, right? Most people don't know, I can't believe that, I'm only going to be successful. You're only going to be successful? Look at Harvey Weinstein. In fact, that should be a homework for tomorrow. Look up, of course, it's not so nice to learn about demons, but this guy's a real demon, and he got what he deserves, and he's getting it over and over again. He was a very, very successful movie maker, and he took advantage of many, many women. And he got away with it for a long, long time, until recently, in the last 3-4 years. And now he's facing jail. He's in jail now anyway, but he's going to one trial after another, being accused of and being, let's say, and not only indicted but found guilty of abusing a huge number of women. It's a huge number, and many of them were very famous women who became very famous actresses. So here we see a man who is so successful, extremely rich. He's losing everything now. He's in jail, and it's not that there's one trial. There's one trial after the other, because what happened in the United States is they're eliminating the what you call limitations of bringing a case. And for certain things now, they have eliminated all limits for making a legal case against someone, especially for child molestation, and now for also women that have been abused. Whereas before there was limitations, like you could only sue someone for after 3 years or after 7 years. Now you can sue anyone you want and with no limitation on it, right? For those two types of categories, that is for child molestation and for serious abuse of women. So now the Harvey Weinsteins of the world in America, and it's going to spread all the other countries also, can be prosecuted at any time, and no matter how much in the past the abuse took place, and be put in jail, right? Found guilty. And it's a good thing they've done that. There's no what you call limitation of time now. Okay, so in this relief from material distress, it says, there are many results of past sinful activities for which we are suffering at the present moment. And we may be suffering in the future due to our present sinful activities. But all of these reactions to sinful deeds can immediately be stopped if we take to Krishna consciousness. Now that's the one sentence that struck me the most when I joined the movement. That sentence. But of all these reactions to sinful deeds, but all of these reactions to sinful deeds can immediately be stopped if we take the Krishna consciousness. It doesn't say eliminated, it says stopped. So when I understood that, it took me a couple months in Krishna consciousness to actually come to realization of that sentence. That's why I decided to join. because I knew from my experience of 21 years that I had very bad karma. I knew it. I didn't even know what karma was, but I learned what karma was when I found out about Bhagavad Gita. And then when I encountered this sentence, but all of these reactions to sinful deeds can immediately be stopped if we take the Krishna consciousness. That really struck me, and I realized I got to join this movement. I got to stay as close as I can be to Prabhupada, because nobody else is explaining this as clearly that Prabhupada is. Now, is there the same type of teaching in Christianity and Judaism and Islam? To a certain extent, yes. Right? They all promise that you'll go to heaven if you accept Jesus or Allah or Elohim. But the way Prabhupada and the Vaishnava Acharyas give exhaustive information about how to stop this whole thing, that is, the general principle is there in these other religions, but it's not clearly and what you would say in a very comprehensive way explained. Like, for example, you have priests in the Catholic Church and nuns that drink wine. They think it's part of their culture. Why? Because they think that when Jesus broke the bread and some wine, which was actually only grape juice, it wasn't wine, then that became the Eucharist, the transformation of bread and wine into the flesh and blood of Jesus. And then they're supposed to, that was the original prasadam in Christianity. They had communities like ours, and they didn't have churches or anything in the first 150 years of Christianity. It's not like Krishna consciousness. It was like a bomb that took off, right? or a rocket that takes off. It took years for them to build churches and establish communities and establish their what you would call Bible and so forth. But in those early days, their prasadam was this Eucharist, this blessing of grape juice and bread, and its transformation into the blood and flesh of Christ. And then why do we talk about blood and flesh of Christ? Because Christ stopped meat eating in Christianity by saying, if you have knowledge of the celebration that's going to come up soon for the Jews, and that is when they celebrate their liberation. Oh no, they celebrate the day that God warned them to put a sign in front of their door of their house. And this was when they were in captivity in Egypt. When I say a house, their hut or whatever. So that when God came to kill the firstborn child of everyone in Egypt, he would not kill the firstborn child of the Jews. Now, this is a history. If you read the Bible, you'll read this history. And it's called the Passover, because God passed over the dwellings of the Jews and only killed the children, the firstborn children of the Egyptians. Now, it sounds pretty horrible and makes God seem like he's really mean and nasty. That's unfortunate, but the saving grace is Jesus, who doesn't do anything like that, right, in his pastimes later on. But anyway, the Jews celebrate what's called Passover. They're going to celebrate it now, right? Look it up right now, Passover, Jewish holiday. I think it's right now. It's the same time as Christmas. So it's interesting to know these things, because now you understand, certain things about other religions. So what does it say about Passover?
It says April.
Get the microphone.
But here it says, Maharaj, the Passover holiday is from the April 15th to the
Okay,
April.
yeah.
April
So right now it's Hanukkah. It's different.
Yes.
A different one. Okay, so read what it says about Passover.
So the Passover commemorates the biblical story of Exodus, where God freed the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. The celebration of Passover is prescribed in the book of Exodus in the Old Testament. So that's the context.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, one step toward that was this Passover, where God, there were 7 bad things that happened to the Egyptians, and finally they said, we got to get rid of these Jews. You know, they're too dangerous. Their God is more powerful than our God. You know, so we got to throw them out of the country. You know, huh? So, no, wait a minute. Speak into the microphone.
Hanukkah.
And speak slowly.
Yeah.
Don't slur your words.
So there is a festival called Hanukkah.
Hanukkah.
Yeah, Hanukkah. It's 19. So it's in 167 BC. The Maccabees.
Okay, but that's Hanukkah. That's not Passover.
No, it's not possible. But that is the
That's
same
right
time
now.
frame. Right now,
That's right
19
now,
between
yeah.
December 19 to
Yeah.
26.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to talk about Hanukkah. Yeah. Okay. So what we're talking about are these sinful reactions for sins that are committed. So right now, Putin is committing a lot of sins, and so is Zelensky. So whenever there's a lot of sins committed, there's a lot of suffering, right? It can be individually, like you or me. So anyway, when I read this sentence, it says, but all of these reactions to sinful deeds can immediately be stopped if we take the Krishna consciousness. As evidence for this, Rupa Goswami quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 14th chapter, 19th verse. This verse is in connection with Lord Krishna's instruction to Uddhava, where he says, my dear Uddhava, devotional service unto me is just like a blazing fire, which can burn into ashes unlimited fuel supplied to it. The purport is that as the blazing fire can burn any amount of fuel to ashes, so devotional service to the Lord in Krishna consciousness can burn up all the fuel of sinful activities. For example, in the Gita, Arjuna thought that fighting was a sinful activity, but Krishna engaged him on the battlefield under his order, and so the fighting became devotional service. Therefore, Arjuna was not subjected to any sinful reaction. Okay, now this is very interesting, how you can take one thing that's sinful and make it not sinful. But how is that? You have to follow Krishna's instructions. Now, normally, killing people is very sinful, and it's one of the worst sins you can commit. The 2 of the worst sins are killing people and engaging in illicit sex. Those are the 2 worst things you can do. But in the case of the battle of Kurukshetra, Krishna asked Arjuna to do what he was trained to do, which is kill bad people and reestablish the principles of religion. So that became devotional service. Now, is every war devotional service? No. Because it depends who the leader is and what is the purpose. So if the purpose is, like in Putin's case, to gain territory, then it's very sinful. So when Lord Ramachandra defeated Ravana and the Rakshasas and killed most of them, his purpose was not to take over Lanka. He turned Lanka, he gave Vibhishan the responsibility of ruling in Lanka and ruling according to Lord Ramachandra's principles of only one wife, and the king must be a pious person following the principles of Varnashram Dharma, and the society should be organized on the basis of Varnashram Dharma so everyone can make spiritual advancement. And no Rakshasa behavior, but behavior as genuine devotees. So he did not try and take more territory. He simply established Krishna consciousness by conquering Lanka and putting Ravana's brother in charge, who became a devotee. Okay, so that's very interesting. So also, it says, a person born in a Brahmana family or in a family of dog eaters due to his past activities. If a person is born in a family of dog eaters, it means that his past activities were all sinful. But if even such a person takes to the path of devotional service and begins to chant the holy names of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, he is fit. He at once is fit to perform the ritualistic ceremonies. This means that his sinful reactions have immediately become neutralized. So, after being in the movement, getting initiated first and second, I was able to do ritualistic ceremonies, like initiation ceremonies and also funeral ceremonies and all kinds of things, right? Whereas before I would never have been allowed to do anything like that, nor would I have known how to do it, right? And I was born in a family of dog eaters. Well, they didn't eat exactly dogs, but they ate meat. So all this resonated to me when I first joined the movement. I began to realize, well, first of all, how merciful Lord Chaitanya is to give a chance to people like myself and many others. And not only, and it says, this means that his sinful reactions have immediately become neutralized. In other words, stopped, neutralized. It doesn't mean they're ended, because if a person falls down, they can come back again. But if a person continually spends time in Krishna consciousness, and especially hearing lectures and chanting their rounds and taking prasadam, they can become gradually, one by one, purified of all their previous sins. What happens at joining and in the initial stages of Krishna consciousness is everything's put on hold, or it's neutralized. In other words, it's not permitted to act on us. That means our karma. So that we have a chance to be Krishna conscious. You can't engage in Krishna consciousness unless your karma is put on hold. And then, by the practice itself, little by little, one by one, all the sins that we've committed previously are purified until we attain pure devotional service, where there's no chance of falling down, and we're always 24 hours a day engaged in Krishna's service. So, now, what are these things? It is stated in the Padma Purana that there are 4 kinds of effects due to sinful activities, which are listed as follows. 1, the effect which is not yet fructified. In other words, it's something subtle. That's what happens when you die. Your baggage of unfinished desires and karma from the previous life go into your next body and mind. And it's a subtle thing. You can't see it, you can't taste it, you can't hear it, but it's there, right? And it's going to awaken, especially when you achieve puberty, like around 11, 12, 13 years old. It'll start manifesting itself. Okay, so the effect which is not yet fructified. Number 2, the effect which is lying as seed. So you can see a seed, but you don't really know what it is. Like, you can look at seeds of, let's say, collard greens and kale. They all look alike. They're almost exactly the same size. They're the same color. You don't know what it is until you plant it, right? So you see a seed, but you don't really know what it is, right? So the second stage of sinful reactions to sinful acts is the seed state. You can see it, but you don't really know what it is. And the third stage, the effect, which is already the effect which is almost mature. So you start seeing what that seed is. It sprouts, and it becomes a little sprout. Again, you're not quite sure what it is, right? But as it gets bigger and bigger, you notice, oh, this is kale, and that one is collard greens, and this one is broccoli, and this one is something else, right? Now you're able to see it. It's not in the seed state anymore. It's a sprout, and its sprouting is growing very fast, and it's becoming a plant. And then eventually, number 4 is the effect is fully mature. So, when the effect is fully mature, now what are these 4 things? Well, the first one is something subtle. You can't see it, and you don't know what it is. The second one, something is there, but you still don't know what it is, but something is there, right? The third one, you definitely see something. You see distress. You see anxiety. You see legal problems. You see physical problems. See, and you have financial problems, right? These are all, let's say, preliminary things that you're seeing, just like legal problems, financial problems. They might not have taken place yet, but you see them coming very soon. Just like, you see that you're going to get laid off from your job. It hasn't happened yet, but you know it's going to happen. So this is the third step. And then the fourth step, it happens, right? And some people are born, let's say, with congenital defects right at birth. Well, it matured right away, right at birth, right? Or it happened after you were 5 years old or 10 years old or 16 years old. You had a serious accident and now you're crippled for the rest of your life. Or you get polio, or you get this disease or that disease. So now the sinful reactions have matured. So these are the 4 steps, and they have names. The subtle step is called kutam. And then the seed stage is called, if I'm not mistaken, prapti. And then the maturing stage is called falonmukha. And then the full-blown stage, the full-blown stage is called what? 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 Parabdha means it's manifest. So it would be called Parabdha Phalam. Yeah. Okay, so now we can understand much more about our psychological and physical development as a human being, because this is happening to everyone, what I just described. And there's a direct way of how to stop it. But most people won't accept that direct way of stopping it, or indirect way, or they don't want it to stop, but they don't realize how bad it is. Now, if you look up Harvey Weinstein, you'll see how bad it becomes for people who perform continually sinful activity and think they're getting away with it. No one's getting away with anything in this world. You can't hide anything from Paramatma. So to teach your kids, what is Paramatma, what are the 4 stages of sinful reaction, all these things. If you learn these things in a young age, you become very careful about what you do in life. And why have to do bad things and suffer to learn? Why can't you learn about it and not do those bad things and not be subject to the suffering? That's real education, right? And we're going to start talking about that. What is real education? It's the 13th chapter, 8th to 12th verse of Bhagavad Gita. We'll come to that a little later. So then, now, we covered a lot of these things previously. I wanted to go over it more deeply. And now it says, vilasa means enjoyment. Bhoga vilasa, enjoying sense gratification. And, so there's something, but there's transcendental enjoyment, and it's called sattvika. So you have bhoga vilasa and sattvika vilasa. So sattvika vilasa, there are 8 symptoms of transcendental ecstasy, and we'll talk about that more in depth later on. But then it says that there are 8 kinds of sattvika transformations. So when one is completely pure devotee, these symptoms are visible. That is called vilasa, enjoyment. Yet pada pankaja palasa vilasa bhaktya karmasayam. When one is engaged in that vilasa, enjoyment, spiritual, blissful life, then the root cause of karma becomes vanquished. Karmani nirdhati kintu cha bhakti bhajam. So that's Brahma Samhita, verse 54. So until we actually experience these 8 different types of vilasa, these transcendental ecstasies, karma is not stopped. It may be put on hold, but it's not eliminated, right? So in the Brahma Samhita it is said, they are no more interested with the attraction of fruitive activities, karma sayam gratitam, which are very deep-rooted, yet pada pankaja palasa vilasa bhaktya karma sayam gratitam udgratayanti. Very easily they can be uprooted. Tadvam na rikta mataya. Rikta mataya, those who are attached to live in the forest, in the mountain, in the cave, alone, in a secluded place, and with great endeavor trying to stop the agitation of the senses and controlling them. The yogis especially, they try to do that. And the jnanis also, they read philosophy and discuss philosophy. The yogis control the senses, yoga indriya samyamya. In this way, they are trying to get out of this chain of fruitive activities. But the devotees, being attracted to the flavor of the lotus flower of Krishna's feet, or a lotus flower, and Krishna, his face is called also lotus-eyed, his navel is called Padmanabha, his feet are called lotus feet, Pada, Padma, and his garland is also Padma. He's very much fond of Padma, the lotus. When a devotee is attached to the lotus flower of Krishna's feet, automatically they forget all such material activities. They haven't got to endeavor separately. The jnanis and the yogis, they are trying to, by their different endeavors, they are trying to get out of this entanglement. But the devotees, simply by engaging himself in Vasudeva Bhakti, Vasudeva Parayana, simply by bhakti, they come out of the entanglement without any difficulty. This is stated in this verse. Tadvan na rikta matayo yataya pi rudha stroto ganas tam aranam. By stop functioning, they cannot do so nicely. So by becoming a Mayavadi and trying to stop things, you cannot do this easily. That's where I'll get it. Don't worry about it. But by becoming a devotee, you can easily stop all this karma and suffering and everything by feeling transcendental happiness in Krishna consciousness. So we began by talking about the 6 6 things that happen or characteristics of pure devotional service. The first is that one is relieved of all material distress. And the second is that pure devotional service is the beginning of auspiciousness, kalyan. And then the third is pure devotional service automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure. That's the point. This sattvika, this transcendental pleasure. As soon as you begin to feel this transcendental pleasure, your whole stock of karma is beginning to be destroyed by this happiness, by this transcendental ecstasies in Krishna consciousness, right? Okay, so we'll stop right there. These are big points, and we're going to go over them slowly the rest of the week. If we understand these things, the 4 types of karmic reactions, then we can look at our life and say, oh yeah, that's happened to me, and it's still happening. I want to stop it now. Now you have the let's say the nitty gritty of how to stop this thing, right? Completely, and rather quickly, and then you can have a real life, and not be afraid anymore of what's going to happen in the future. Fear of what's going to happen in the future puts people in deep anxiety, and they do strange things, like buy artificial food for 6 months. There's all these advertisements. They have to first scare you, and then you get interested in having 6 months of junk food in your pantry. You say, well, me and my family will exist for 6 months. Well, no, not if there's an atomic bomb. You won't exist for 6 minutes, right? But they say, but I got the food. Yeah, okay. That doesn't mean you're going to be safe, right? So you see, everything is a hoax in this world today, and they create these artificial disasters to scare people, so they will buy things that they don't really need, right? Okay, and this is what everybody does. The doctors do it, the capitalists do it, the politicians do it. They scare you so that you make decisions that you would normally not make, and the point is, do you actually believe Krishna exists and Prabhupada is a pure devotee? Do you actually believe this? If you don't, then you'll get scared and you'll start doing things that are self-destructive. So you have to realize how the material world is working. It's working on the basis of creating fear. As soon as you're fearful, you'll grab at any straw to save yourself, right? So, and then people come and say, well, you should do this, then you will, you buy some property in Hawaii, and as soon as there's a war, you take an airplane and go to Hawaii, to your paradise. Don't believe it. Look what's happening in Hawaii. There's 2 volcanoes that have exploded on the Maui, the biggest island, right? And it periodically explodes every 6 months or 6 years, right? So there's no place in the world where you're going to be safe. No place. The only place is in Krishna consciousness, right? When you're actually following the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. Okay, we'll stop right now. Are there any questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. The modes of material nature is supernatural power, right? Can we consider self-ego is also as a supernatural power?
No, false ego is something false. It's not supernatural. It's metaverse. You create some false reality in your brain, in your mind, and you think it's true, and it makes you act and suffer, act in strange ways and suffer unnecessarily. It's not a real thing. It's false, right? False ego. It's not real, but you believe it is, and it makes you do things that are self-destructive.
Okay, so is false ego Maya's creation as well? Can we consider that way?
Maya is just giving you the opportunity to create it yourself, just like Facebook is giving you an opportunity to go into the metaverse. They're not forcing you. They're enticing you. What's the enticement? You can be God now. You can create your own universe. You can create your own reality. But it's not real. See? So it just makes things worse. In the beginning, you think, oh, this is much better now. Now I can do this. Now I can be an NBA basketball player. And you can create that imaginary thing. You put this thing on your head, right? And now you're seeing that imaginary thing, and you're creating it, right? But it's not real.
And can we also consider?
What?
Can we consider modes of material nature as a power of Maya?
Maya is in charge of doing two things: giving you material success and taking it away from you so you go crazy.
So independent of modes of material nature, or still works with the modes of material nature, but
Yeah.
is a separate
Section.
entity, section. Okay.
Yeah, the worst section. She gives you, at first, material success. That's what you want, right? And then she takes it away from you, either abruptly or slowly, and drives you crazy, and puts you in fear and anxiety and all these bad emotions, and you're ready to kill someone, or you're ready to commit suicide, and do what they call when you kill your family also. What do you call that? It's a special name they have. Honorable killing. Huh? Honor killing. Yeah, it's honor killing. It's not honor killing. It's something disgusting, right? Killing your own family, but they call it honor killing, so that your wife and kids don't suffer after you kill yourself. Huh?
This is based on prestige, social status.
Okay. I thought you were talking about Bali.
What's Bali?
There's a
What?
we kill sacrifice. I think sacrifice.
No, but this is honor killing is a euphemism. It's dishonorable. What do you mean? You kill your own kids and your wife, and that's an honor killing? No, they call it honor killing. All the nonsense demons, but it's not. It's horrible.
How they are sugar coating the term Maharaj, honor.
Yeah,
You know that.
yeah. They're sugar coating it, exactly. Yeah. So did I answer all your questions? Okay. False ego is false, Prabhu. It's not real.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
My understanding is every person has all the three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance in a different levels. Like when you put it in the Ayurveda, it comes to the constituency, like Rajas,
What do you mean by
Tamas.
every person has?
The three modes of material nature are
Well, anyone born in the material world with a material body is going to come under the control of the modes of material nature.
so. Is one person always works in the mode of goodness?
It's not possible because the modes of material nature are fluctuating all the time.
Right. So how do we always evolve into mode of goodness and
By
eventually?
becoming Krishna conscious. Krishna consciousness is Suddha.
Bhakti.
Uh,
Sattva.
so the mode of goodness is Sattva, Suddha Sattva. Or that's Krishna consciousness, where you have no material desire. You only have desire to please the Lord. And your only activity is pleasing the Lord. It's not pleasing yourself or pleasing the sense gratification of others. Just like, when I was in my company in France, every Christmas I would get presents from my suppliers. They would send me, a bottle of wine or a bottle of whiskey, right? So I was thinking, what am I going to do with this? I'm not going to use it, right? Or maybe I'll give it to someone. Then I thought about that. No, if I give it to someone and they drink it, I get part of the karma. So I used to always destroy it. I didn't just give it to someone. Like, for example, if someone brings here, let's say, tea and leaves it, here, as a donation, what do we do with it? Yeah, we trash it, right? Because if you give it to someone, you're contributing to them breaking the rules and regulations, even though they don't care about rules and regulations, right? but you would still get some reaction. So, you know, but it takes time to figure all these things out. You know, you think, well, I don't want to waste this. It's such a nice bottle of wine. You know, it must cost like $100. You know, so I'll give it to someone. I have a friend of mine who drinks wine. No, you'll get part of the karma.
And how do we, is in the devotional practice, is it just mode of goodness, or is there passion and
No,
ignorance?
it can be in the mode of goodness in the beginning until you come to Sudasattva, transcendental goodness.
Right. In that, it's just one, or like how do, my question
No,
is,
the mode of goodness is the only mode from which you can actually begin to understand Krishna consciousness. That doesn't mean you'll understand it completely, but you'll begin to understand. And then as you get better and better at it, and there's initiation, there's hearing classes and doing service and getting involved, it'll eventually turn into transcendental goodness. Okay, it's
Thank
a
you, Maharaj.
stepping stone.
Hare Krishna.
When there are people in the mode of goodness, they're still, see, the modes are still fluctuating. So they're going to be mixed. They're not going to be in the mode of goodness completely unless you actually become Krishna conscious. Yeah, okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that Krishna doesn't take away your karma, but he stops your karma. So when does a devotee encounter the reactions of his karma again?
When they fall down, when they violate the rules and regulations that they promised to keep. You promise, what do you promise at initiation? No meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and always chanting Hare Krishna 16 good rounds. Right? So when you start not doing those things, your karma comes back because it's only been put on hold.
So, but if you follow all of the rules and the regulations, then you will never have to bear the reactions of your karma.
Yes. Yes.
So Maharaj, when the Lord
So
says,
now, there's another thing. When you break those regulations, you're making more karma. That's another thing. Let's say you were completely following for 50 years, and then you fall down. Well, maybe in that 50 years, because all your sincerity, all the service you did, you've purified your karma. But now you fell down, so there's new karma now. That's another thing, right? You see? So keeping the rules and regulations means you will eventually, by taking part in classes, doing all the different services, going out on Sankirtan, giving up a Vishayi lifestyle. Vishayi means sense-gratifying lifestyle. You can be a devotee and be a sense gratifier also, right? There's plenty of devotees like that. But when you give it up completely, then all your karma goes away, right? But then if you fall down, then there's new karma now. Okay?
But Guru Maharaj, when even if we follow all the rules and regulations, the most suffering come to the devotees only.
Why do you say that? Are you suffering right now?
Means even if we follow rules and regulations, I have seen that suffering comes. Means suffering will not go away, right? But you get more maybe power to
Not to suffer, to tolerate.
To tolerate.
So then suffering is not there because you're tolerating it. See, what you just said is actually wrong because you don't have any proof that people who actually follow all the rules and regulations, they're also suffering. You have no proof of that. But if they're suffering, you have proof that they're not following the rules and regulations properly. And if they're complaining about it, you know for sure that they're not following the rules and regulations. But if they're tolerating it and not complaining about it, then they're just getting some suffering, what's called, minimal suffering. Instead of dying, they got a cut, right? Or they get a sprain where they should have broken their leg. They just get a sprain. So that is called very minimal suffering. Sometimes that of becoming a devotee. You should have died, but you didn't. You only got a cut or a broken leg or something like that. But the more one advances spiritually, the more they tolerate and they don't complain. And then you go to the 12th chapter Bhagavad Gita, verses 13 and 14. In the purport, it says, "Better to suffer than to protest." That means you actually have faith in God and Krishna and Prabhupada. Better to suffer than to protest. So someone who is in that situation, they are protected by Krishna completely. So suffering, someone who's not Krishna conscious, they suffer. Someone who is Krishna conscious, even if there is suffering, they tolerate it. And better to tolerate than to protest. That's even a higher stage, where you have a valid reason to protest, but you don't, because you have complete faith that Krishna will protect you.
So can you say that Maharaj, like, suffering is there, but devotees don't affected by that spirits rather than the people.
Look,
Suffering is there.
Prabhupada had severe diabetes.
Yeah,
He was not complaining about it.
yeah, yeah. So they didn't affect it.
Yeah. Yes.
Prabhu, I was just reading. So I was reading Prarabdha, fruit bearing karma, is the portion of the accumulated karma that has ripened and appears as a particular
You can see
problem in the present life.
Yeah, there's prarabdha and aparabdha. Aparabdha means karma is there, but you can't see it. And parabdha means you begin to see it, and until it's fully manifest.
Right, so like once we have taken birth, that means there is a portion of the karma that is part of our prarabdha, and we have to face it in this birth, even if we are doing devotional service. So we get the we get the strength to tolerate it, but we will have to face it, right? Once the
No, that's the whole point. When I told you, when I read that sentence, I realized that, and I by that time I knew I had bad karma. Then I realized, what's it say? But all of these reactions to sinful deeds can immediately be stopped if we take to Krishna consciousness. So I read that, I thought about it, and that made me decide to join Hare Krishna movement, because it was the only way I could put a stop to this bad karma that I was having. So it stopped. Now, if you follow Krishna consciousness strictly, it actually stops and eventually is eliminated. If you keep making mistakes while you're in Krishna consciousness, then it comes back again. Okay? So, therefore, it makes sense. You want it to stop completely, then you just completely engage in Krishna consciousness, and it will stop completely. It won't come back. But if we make mistakes purposefully, either by accident or by purpose, if it's by accident, we can be excused once or twice or maybe even 3 times. Not after that. But if it's purposely, then it comes back.
So Maharaj, I think in the past you made us go through this verse 10:14:8. Tathayana kampartam.
Yeah.
So is that in this context relevant?
Yes. Yeah. It's about toleration.
Tolerance, toleration while continuing the devotional service, so that eventually we are.
As long as we're in the material world, there's going to be issues that are out of our control, like earthquakes and hurricanes and things like that. So we just learn to tolerate them. there'll be family issues, there'll be this issue, financial issues, so many different issues. But if we don't lose our faith in Krishna and we maintain our faith in Krishna, we will be protected by the Lord in some mysterious, wonderful way. But you have to have the experience to not panic. Most people panic right away. They go right away to the ER. You know. Oh, I got this thing, you know, it's itching like anything, you know, and they give you some Tylenol and send you home, right? And you get, you know, $2,000 bill, you know, and then you realize, what a stupid thing I did, you know. I should have just gotten the Tylenol for 50 cents and, you know, taken it. So you see, everybody panics in the material world today. Well, he has something to say.
Oh, it's okay.
Go ahead.
My question was, if you do devotional service with a material motive, do you get karma?
If you do with the material motive,
Yeah.
devotional service with the material motive, how can it be devotional service if there's a material motive? Yeah, of course you would get karma, because you're not being sincere, right? So how would you like to have a friend that actually hates you? And when you find out that he's not really your friend, you'd be really upset, right? The same way, how can Krishna tolerate doing devotional service with a material purpose? He'll tolerate it to see if you get rid of that material purpose over time of doing devotional service. But if you keep that material desire and nothing changes over time, then you're going to, you know, get a reaction, a serious reaction. Okay?
Thank you.
What was your
Maharaj, can we consider the natural calamities or the bodily ailments as prarabdha karma? Or do they fall outside the prarabdha karma?
Well, there's something called collective karma. When there's too much sinful activity in one place, then something happens, like an earthquake or tsunami or something happens, you know, and everyone's affected by it. But just like in World War II, the Japanese were, I think it was the Japanese, were bombing Calcutta on one side. On the other side, the British created an artificial famine by purchasing all the rice in Bengal and other places and putting them in go-downs and protecting them with their army. And then the price of rice went way up. So there were two big things. They were getting bombed, and the price of rice went so far up they couldn't buy it. So people were dying. Right? One was artificially created, the other was because of the war. So Prabhupada did a survey. He went around and talked to all the Vaishnavas that he knew. And he asked them, how you surviving? And they said, Krishna's mercy, you know, we're able to feed our kids and we're okay for the time being. Whereas people were dying all over the place in Calcutta. But the Vaishnavas somehow or other were not getting so seriously affected by it. So he did that survey. He wanted to see, you know, how the Vaishnavas were doing in such a dire situation. And obviously the ones that were really sincere, somehow or other Krishna was protecting them. So, conclusion, become serious about Krishna consciousness. Follow the rules and regulations. You'll be protected by Krishna.
Okay. Maharaj, one more last question. The tolerate then protest, is it only applicable for Brahmana part of the Varna?
No, right now,
Varna system.
right now you're being trained to be a Brahmana. Krishna consciousness trains everyone to come to the level of Brahmana. Now, Brahmanas, like, for example, you look at Dronacharya. He was a Brahmana, but yet he was teaching the art of war. So Brahmanas can take the position or the activity of a Kshatriya, or even sometimes as a Vaishya, never as a Sudra. And they do it to teach others how to do things properly. So Dronacharya was a Brahmana, but he acted, but he taught the art of war to the Kurus, kids, and the Pandavas. So you can do that also, even as a Brahmana. Not that you become a businessman, but you can teach people how to do business properly, or how to farm properly, or how to fight properly, according to principles of karma, principles of the Manusamhita. Okay? But you are being trained to become a Brahmana right now. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
We're not training you to be a Sudra. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we'll stop there. We went way over time. Haribol. And Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Christmas. Anybody want to sing?
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Rucharana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Vandamui Savadana Mate
Vandamui Savadana Mate
Jahara Prasade Bhai E Bhavatoriya Jai Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoy Te
Krishna Prapti Hoya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chite Te Koriya Kya Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो प्रेम भक्ति जहा होते अविद्या विनाश जाते वेदे गाय जहर चरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनर बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनर बंधु लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवना लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवना हा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पादाचया हा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पादाचया ए बेजास कुशुक त्रिभुवना जय प्रभुपाद पतित पावना जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरा भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahansa Paravajagacharya, Statara Satarashi, Shimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Dharidas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath, Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Yamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to Sambhutavad, all glories to Sambhutavad, all glories to Sambhutavad, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna. Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Garbhacharya. Livi Sesa Sunyavali Paskati Rasatra. The lotus feet of our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great honor and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master of the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and master of devotees, O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi Hari Bol.